Welcome everyone to another Legal Tech Talk session. My name is Frances Anderson. I'm the MD of Netlaw Media. Now, what a month we are having in terms of discussions covering so many different things: diversity, leadership, security, and now, today, I'm delighted to introduce a stimulating session with a formidable panel from the legal community on digital transformation. So extending strategic service advantage. That will be chaired by leading industry figure, Derek Southall. Now, what does training for lawyers need to adapt to reflect the transition in technology that the sector is experiencing? Also, how have ALSPs played a part in the digital transformation strategy so far? This session is going to explore many things, including the journey to the cloud, how it affects the lawyers, and how the tech teams are actually transforming the internal culture of the firms at present. So now, before I'm going to hand over to the full panel and for Derek to introduce the session today and the kind of topics we'll be covering, let me start by introducing him. Now, he is the founder and CEO of Hyperscale Group. He is a high-profile and very well-connected figure in the legal technology world, innovation, knowledge management, and digital marketplaces, and was recently described as a doyen of legal IT and innovation. Derek has spent nearly 25 years in a range of leading strategic roles for a top 50 global law firm, for the most of this time as a partner, head of strategic development, and subsequently as head of digital and innovation. During this period, Derek oversaw and helped drive growth from 27 million to in excess of 425 million TO, as well as driving and supporting numerous mergers and international expansion to 18 offices in 10 countries. Now, Derek was ranked by the FT as one of the top 3 most innovative lawyers in the UK in the first study in the legal market, and led the firm's technology team to become ranked by the FT as the most innovative in Europe. Now, before I hand over to everyone, we are live. So I do encourage all of you listening today, you can join us in the discussion. Absolutely, we'll bring you in. So literally click on your name and raise your hand, and we'll see that. And then you'll be able to ask your question live to any one of the panelists and Derek as well. Or if you want to engage in through the chat, let us know your thoughts. Do you agree with the panel members and what they're saying? So you put your comments through that, or ask a question, or through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So now, Derek, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Francis. So today we're here to talk about digital transformation, strategic service advantage. And what this is really about is the job for all of us is to make the right stuff happen. You know, we're going through this period of unprecedented change. Law fundamentally is an $800 billion plus business, and most of the work product is still delivered by lawyers. It's still delivered by humans. A lot of the technology just manages information, and that's all beginning to change. So we're going to try to get to the bottom of what we need to do, how law firms need to change, what's working, what's not working. I have got a completely fantastic panel, and I genuinely mean that. I'm really honoured by some of the people we've got here today. We've got Nigel Tranter, who is CTO at Pinson Masons, who again have done some fantastic stuff in the innovation space. Dr. Stacey Sinclair, Head of Technology and Innovation at Fenwick Elliott. And we've got Adrian Cambridge, Head of IT Operations at HFW. So some really great brains around the table. How we're going to start this is really to go around one by one. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists really to tell me a little bit about what their role and their firm is doing, but really to sort of spell out their digital transformation journey and what's worked, perhaps what they've changed over the way. So perhaps 5 minutes from everybody. And then what we'll do is move on to some questions. But perhaps Nigel, if I could pick on you first, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, Derek. Thank you. And welcome, everyone. As Derek said, my name is Nigel Tranter. Go by the name of Nige. Most of the people that I know refer to me as that. So if you've got a question, please refer to me as Nige. I'm Chief Technology Officer for Vincent Masons. My remit currently covers all aspects of technology, the standard capabilities you would see through service management and infrastructure. But it also covers enterprise architecture, product delivery, product servicing, product development, and business change, which you typically see as the PMO, business analyst, et cetera, et cetera. So it's quite wide remit, and pretty much most of the areas of what you would see in tech. So Derek refers to technology transformation or digital transformation, and it's an interesting topic because there are many versions, if you go and look this up, of what digital transformation actually means, and they need to be relevant to the context that they're brought into. For me, I'll try and boil it down and be a little bit more simple when we're having this discussion with people that perhaps haven't had a technology career. And digitization it focuses quite a lot in terms of automating processes or entities where assets are moved around. Data becomes an important topic within the digital arena, and the removal of human or manual characteristics and the ability to integrate both internally and externally for information flows. So, you can get into a long debate about what it is and what it's not, but I think keeping it simple and trying to get the concept over to people that will be involved in transformation activities is essential. So I think at that point, Derek, I'll hand it back to yourself, if that's okay.
Yeah. So Stacey, perhaps again, if you can sort of tell us a little bit more about yourself and your firm and your journey. You are a lady who appears to have 3 jobs.
I don't know what those jobs are. If I did, I might be better at them, I think. Thanks, Derek. So Stacey Sinclair, with a firm called Fenwick Elliott, and Fenwick Elliott is the UK's largest specialist construction and engineering law firm, and so we only specialize in construction, energy, infrastructure. And whilst we might be the largest in that, relative to my fellow panelists, we would be considered small or medium by comparison. And I think that brings a lot of different potentially challenges to the digital transformation conversation. I'm sure we're all facing the same issues of security, issues around data, training, resources, and so forth. I suppose the one thing about Fenwick Elliott, though, is I think we've always been, even from its inception, so the firm was founded in 1986, and I think by 1987, the founding partners and their 6 other colleagues had 2 fax machines between them and were already dabbling in email, despite none of their clients having email. And I think that sort of gives the ethos of our firm, and which is quite nice because given our size, we can be quite agile in some of these conversations that we're having around technology. And we've sort of been thinking about these things, since day one, as it were. I mean, in terms of our journey now, we, everyone talks about this move to the cloud and what are you doing about this, so forth. And back in 2012, our document management system, we moved that to a cloud-based platform back then. So our issues around moving to the cloud, yes, the relevant concerns and so forth, but I think we've done the I won't say heavy lifting, we've done the heavy discussing already. And now we're into issues of why isn't all of our data in the cloud? How come this massive chunk over here isn't? And some of the, I've just recently learned of the word shadow IT. I'm loving that word. It's probably well known to most of you, but it wasn't to me about 2 years ago, or a year ago, in fact. And it's those issues that I think small and medium-sized law firms need to get to grips with quickly. And I guess in my role, it touches and concerns all of those things that Nigel referred to: internal operations, IT infrastructure, IT, what we use, what platforms we use internally, as well as assisting our clients with technology issues in construction and new products and so forth that we come across. So I think I'll leave that there, if that's okay.
Thank you. If we can move over to Adrian, who gets the vote for the first panelist of the year with ambient lighting, which is impressive. So, Adrian.
Hi, Adrian Cambridge. I'm a global head of IT operations at HFW. I joined HFW in 2019 after a stint of 12 years in the Middle East. and I came back because I like rain. No. I joined as part of a new team at HFW. Historically, there'd been an underinvestment in IT. There'd been very poor communication between the IT department and the rest of the business. The trust was low in the IT department, so we came in as part of a new team. We were tasked with transforming not only the IT department themselves, but the rest of the firm, looking at the strategy going forward. Previously, HFW had been very cloud averse. They needed a new PC fleet. Budget spend was high, but the value that we were delivering was low. We have five private data centers worldwide, but when we did the migration to these data centers, we did a lift and shift, so there was no real optimization done. We have an overly complicated WAN, and it was very expensive, so clearly we did need to transform. Our first kind of dabble into the cloud was actually sort of forced upon us by the crisis. Most of our users at home don't have access to their landline in the office, and that we had no messaging tool or anything like that. So I was asked to roll out Microsoft Teams, which I'd been banging on about for quite some time, but there we go. We engaged we actually engaged directly with the risk team on this, because it was important to explain to them what the risks are and the potential of data loss, cyberbullying, user acceptance, all that kind of stuff with this new channel, because it is a new way in which we can talk both internally and externally on this cloud-based system. So we found that to be very important, because they really didn't understand any of this new technology, and engaging with them directly, and it took some time, really helped to drive this on. We asked them to write the user acceptance policy for this product. And we asked them to make decisions about data retention, whether we can delete items or not, and made the business responsible for these decisions. This has been pushed onto the IT department in the past. Also, we had to look very closely to the way in which we got adoption. We have adoption of 99%. So of our 1,070 users, 99% are using this product on a daily basis, and that was critical. So we actually engaged with a third-party company that that specializes in change management. They produced training videos and documentation, because, as you know, lawyers are subject matter experts, and when they are out of their expertise, they can sometimes push back and don't want to admit that they need help or won't ask for help. So we created bite-sized training videos and material that they consume on a very quick and easy basis to allow them to get up to speed. And as I said, 99% adoption rate, I think is pretty good. And we're also looking at potentially moving to Azure. We've just engaged with a company to help us with that process. But again, when we did the initial discussions about this and the initial sort of opening few days of consultation, we invited the business in, we invited all the risk team, we invited people from finance, we invited people from marketing. We brought everybody in so they understood what we were doing. And one of the other things that we did before we touched even for the cloud is to write to the board and explain to them why we needed to go to cloud and get their support and get their sign off before we charged ahead, so to speak. So that's kind of where we are at the moment, and lots of very exciting projects to work on this year from my department.
Brilliant. Well, look, a question to everybody, but perhaps kick off with Nige. Digital transformation, everybody wants it. What are the biggest challenges in making it happen, and what do we do about overcoming those? So big question, Nigel. Over to you first, if I may.
Yeah, thanks, Derek, for giving me the hospital pass to go start with. So I don't mind that. So some of the challenges that I think you see typically in this area is an understanding of what it is. So bringing people together as a collective, stakeholders, vested parties that have got an interest in it, and communicating in a way that's clearly understood is essential. This is not about getting buy-in, but it's getting a common understanding of the vocabulary of what digital transformation means. That is an essential thing to do, not an easy thing. You typically see different levels of skills in an organization. Some will have a lot more understanding of technology than others, a lot more care and engagement about technology. So, there are barriers to overcome there, that you need to plan a strategy around how you're going to do that. Planning is a huge part of a digital transformation exercise, because once you start the engagement and you get people excited about this, you will get, Adrian referred to it, many exciting projects thrown at you with a budget that doesn't match the exciting project list. So you've kind of got to guess and work with your stakeholders. What are your priorities to do? You have to understand the backdrop in which you're doing the digital transformation. It shouldn't be thought of as a nice to have. You've got to understand if there's a necessity in a business driving an imperative to drive the digital transformation agenda. And then you've got to think about the skills and the planning exercise and the delivery exercise, and then the measurement of what's been successful around it, and start to go after those areas. There are a number of ways you can approach that, but in my experience, incrementally is the way you go forward with this. You take an incremental approach where you select a candidate in the digital transformation, and then you do test and learn and incremental feedback and change, and you bring people on and you gain the momentum and you move them forward in that space. But I think if you were to ask me, Derek, what is the key factor, it's education. It's education and bringing people up to a level of being comfortable to talk about what digital actually means to them and what it means to their daily lives.
And Nigel, you've worked in other industries, financial services. Where do you think law firms are on that spectrum in terms of complete digital transformation? You're practically technophobes you're practically sort of cyborgs as people, and then Luddites at the other end. Where are we on that spectrum?
Again, a great question, and thank you for putting me on the spot with that challenging question. If I can answer it in two ways, if I was looking back some years, maybe 5-6 years ago, I would say you were on the Luddite end of that scale. But from what I can see, and being in the legal industry for just under 3 years, the acceleration towards digitization and technology transformation has been exponential. I think it's almost as if people have woke up and realized that this is a place where we need to be and we need to invest. If I look at financial services, which I spent a long time in, they had the same moment themselves. They had that moment about 20 years ago when they suddenly woke up and realized that the technology space had come out from just being servers and boxes and wires to actually being a business advantage and an enabler, and they really got interested. And I think that's what I see now in law. I can pick any relevant piece of correspondence in the legal industry, and they're talking about technology, and they're talking about transformation, and they're talking about digital all the time. So I think the accelerator is really the foot's down now on the pedal.
So Stacey, Adrian, do you agree with that, or are we going to have a Piers Morgan moment where one of you walks off going, no, go completely? Well, what do you think? Do you agree with both what Nigel's just said?
Well, I was just going to add. I was just going to add that. Oh, welcome. I was just going to add that I couldn't agree more about the acceleration piece. Over the last year. The past year has just been, instrumental in that. What would have been a glacial movement, I think, has just, taken hold, and it has sharpened everyone's minds. And it's a different mindset now. People, they can see how technology will help them be more efficient on a day-to-day basis. They want to get to grips with it, and we have lawyers they'll figure things out and they'll scratch around. I mean, lawyers, they get a bad name for some things, but if they need to get from A to B, they will get there, even if they have to climb a mountain like 3 times and back again. They'll figure it out because they have to figure it out by a certain time. And they may not do it in the way you want them to, using the right server or the right save your documents here or do this, that, and the other. But I think the last year has been huge in expediting the digital.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think there was probably if you look at the home working thing, there was probably a suspicion potentially of home working and how effective it could be, and the collaboration tools that we have now with Teams and Zoom and like stuff like that. And everyone's been forced to do it. So now, the other thing I found also is that the way in which my department responded, for as an example, and I'm sure other departments in your department have responded the same. We got everything together. We kept the business running, and now the trust that was built up because of that, they're like, okay, well, what else can you do for us? I mean, apart from probably taking away their physical phones going forward, which I'm very much looking forward to doing, there's so many great things that we can do and achieve. And now that the business has given us the okay to go ahead with cloud, we're looking at every opportunity that we can to leverage that. And particularly, we're also looking at very much a work from anywhere solution, and which means removing all desktops, replacing everything with laptops, so that we're agile, looking at new ways of working, new connectivity, relying a lot more on Office 365. So all of this is now possible because the business trusts us to do it and to get on with it. And they're almost impatient now. I mean, if we don't get on with this new laptop rollout before May, which will be very difficult given that there's not many laptops around, they're going to get very frustrated. And we've been saying for ages that we need to replace our laptops, and now they're like, all right, okay, let's go. So it's good, it's great, but again, we have to. As the IT department, if you can get to being the trusted advisor, being at the top table where decisions are made and you are included as an IT department, and they check with you first before making decisions, whereas in the past, you would probably be the last person to know, and then you have to support it. I think that's critical, and I think because of the crisis, the IT department has been risen to the top level. I'm very fortunate that my IT director, Mark Parr, has an excellent relationship with the business. Is very supportive to his team, and takes a very measured approach, but it's also very forward looking. So we have a great management team, and we're all pulling in the same direction, which really helps. And before in our team, the communication was very good. So before we were able to transform the business, we had to transform our department first as well. So yeah, it's all go at HFW at the moment, and we're very excited to the projects that we've got coming up. Not quite sure how we're going to do all of them, but we've got a great pipeline.
Interesting points just been flushed out. So I hear 2 schools of thought about sort of post-COVID, and the one school of thought is, oh my life, the genie's out now. This is going to be, it's so much demand, unstoppable. IT, the value of IT is being realised. And then there's this other school of thought, which is, the people are going to go back to working the way that they did, and that all this great progress we've made in COVID is going to be slowed down. What do you think? Do you think this is going to be a golden era for IT, or is it a chance of stopping people not going back to traditional habits?
Well, we're looking at potentially doing 3 days at home, 2 days in the office going forward. We're looking at how we can reconfigure our floor plate to have more open working, more hot desking, having more collaboration spaces so that the people from home that are at home can collaborate with the people in the office and with our clients. We're even looking at new headphones that have active noise cancellation, so that if you're working in an open area, you can put those on and not be disturbed. All kinds of things like that. So for me, I can't see that we're good. Certainly from our perspective, is that we're going to go back to how we were before.
Any other views on that? We've got a couple of questions coming in, but any views on that? Do you think this is going to be accelerated change that's unstoppable from now on, or do you think there's a chance of people going back to old habits?
I think you'll get, there's always that risk, and there's always, a particular, type of type of lawyer, type of way of wanting to work that, might inevitably fall back into the old ways. But at least now they have that choice. And I think having the choice, having the technology, it's there. I don't think, therefore, it's going to stop. I still think it's going to accelerate. I think you've got the next generation of lawyers who are going to push that. My 8-year-old was telling me how come I couldn't get how come I didn't have OneDrive on my phone so I could automatically do this, that, and the other. I was like, yeah, good point. So I don't think it's going to stop. I only think it's going to increase, maybe at a potentially slower rate, maybe, because I think it just depends. But I don't think it's just the choice is there, the technology there, and the solutions are there, and yeah.
We've had a great. We were going to sort of deal with questions from the audience later, but we've had a great one which resonates with some of what we're talking about here. So from Elizabeth Bordell, how do we see the IT revolution in smaller firms? So people here are, firms of a certain size, but resource is always a problem in getting this done because you're getting under the skin of the lawyering, and it divides the IT function a bit, but for a smaller firm, are going to have those challenges much more acutely. How do we bridge this resourcing problem? And if you were a part of a smaller firm, how would you tackle digital transformation?
I think I have to answer that one. So where we are, can't remember if I said it. We are less than 100 people. Maybe we're approaching the 100 person mark now, I think, possibly. But resourcing on any front on some of these issues is absolutely my number one issue at the minute. There's never enough. We don't have a department of people looking into the latest technology on this, or what kind of cloud platform should we go to, and those sorts of things. So resourcing in terms of a digital transformation strategy and projects that evolve around that, you tread carefully. You rely on a lot of advice, a lot of consultants. It really is about, and I would go back to what Nige said earlier about communication and education. If you get a wider group of people within your firm excited about something, you need to do a lot of upskilling. You need to, what one person may have done for the past, 10, 15 years may not be what they're set to do in the next 10 or 15 years. But it would be a huge, conversation piece around that, communication, and skills in that. The other thing, I think technology, it's huge for firms of our size. It's such an equalizer. It's such it's really necessary. I mean, I think people probably underestimate the size of our firm often, given where we are in the rankings and so forth. So I think maybe, and I would suggest that, the use of technology has enabled that in terms of know-how and disclosure and all the rest of it.
It's interesting. I had to interview Reena Sengupta, who does all of the research for the FT, and one of the group that we were involved with asked a similar question. And is innovation really about bigger firms? And her answer was absolutely spot on, where she just turned around and said, look, the agility that this brings to a smaller firm, and also the sheer power. I mean, we've acted for we act for firms of all. Our biggest client's 46 billion. Our smallest client is a person. It's and everything in between. But there's a firm, absolutely phenomenal firm, and they are sub 50 people. And the sheer power of the stack that they've got in 365 and some of the other products, they could literally match the biggest firm in the world. And I just think it's a fascinating era for this. And one thing smaller firms have got is the agility. If you advantage. Sorry, Adrian.
If you look at the costs, how much it costs us to have our 5 physical data centers and all the WAN around the world, just to support our infrastructure, it's huge. And a smaller law firm wouldn't have to do that. They could just put everything in the cloud. So all those costs are gone straight away. So I think it's a definite massive enabler for you.
Yeah, and the agility at which we're able to take decisions about something that, smaller technology stuff, things that don't cost, huge sums of money. We can do really fast, implement really quick. speak to the lawyers, who's doing what do they want to do better, faster, or more productively. And we can implement that. We don't need to go and buy 5,000 licenses of something. We can start small, see if it works, doesn't work, and then grow that. And there's a lot of agility that I would absolutely agree with.
We touched on MS365 there, and I mean, I remember winding back the clock 3 years ago, and I think there are lots of people who were originally thinking this is just going to be Office Online. And I sat in a room of IT directors, about 50 IT directors. Somebody very senior from Microsoft was explaining the game plan. One senior IT director said to me, she said, "Okay, so this is the death of all software, and I thought it got everything done, and this is going to change everything." Do we think MS365 is going to be completely game-changing with some of its capabilities? It's got e-disclosure systems, it's got RPA, we've got AI in Cortex and Syntax and all of these different things coming through. Is it just going to be Microsoft's next era, or is it going to just reset everything? What do we think? See, no, I feel like I'm picking on you here, Nigel, but it's a big question. It's a big question, is it? What do we think?
It is a big question, and my initial response is there's a creative tension between something I said earlier, and I think Stacey and Adrian have also commented on. 365 has a real living ecosystem with many capabilities, both available now and more roadmaps around them. We've just seen the recent announcement a couple of days ago of a virtual meeting space that creates an engagement way beyond almost virtual reality, where you feel as if you're in a room. They've created a sense of being in a room, and those capabilities are hard to ignore in terms of adding value to your business in a potentially post-COVID world where we will be, one working theory model is that we will be less in the office and still need to engage. So you can see that there's no reason why people wouldn't say that's for me. But back to an earlier point, if we rely on one ecosystem for all things, how do we then differentiate or create blue ocean type strategy options or capabilities that we're not doing today, because we're still using the same ecosystem? So there's this tension around for smaller organizations. Forgive me for saying that, Stacey, I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I mean, it's a challenge. So it's very attractive to look at an ecosystem that can deliver everything and just buy into that and on you go. For larger organizations that might want to do something different, then there's a creative challenge there. So do I think 365 is a game changer? I do, for quite a lot of organizational needs. Do I think it's in place of everything? No. Do I ever think it will be? Probably not. There will always be some critical component that a client will want that will not be serviced purely and simply by the 365 ecosystem. So the secret will be to blend your offerings around taking those best of breed capabilities, whether in 365 or any other product that we see in the legal market, and kind of streamlining those into a service offering that can be delivered. We talk about cloud, the opportunity with cloud becomes, limitless in those instances, that you can deliver it virtually anywhere in the same transactional way, in the same look, feel, and sense that you're using it. So I think it's a balance around where you are in terms of investment, resources, capability internally, buy-in. I think the days of people coming up and saying, I've got a friend who's got a fantastic product and you should use it, or behind us, I think, the likes of 365 are closing the gaps on some of the legal capabilities.
Yeah.
Other vendors might give me an argument on that, but I think that's where it is.
I'd be very interested in what Stacey and Adrian think on it. But one observation I've had, we work a lot with professional services firms, but a lot with global corporates, and the global corporates, professional services firms were quicker at adopting best of breed technology, but then they've had legacy to deal with, so we're slower than the corporates are moving to 365. The The second the corporates have moved to 365, what's happened? They've looked at all their applications and said, you know what, there's so much capability here. We're going to minimize our tech stack. We're going to be SAP for finance, MS365 for operational stuff and Salesforce. And nothing else has then got to look in. I've been shocked. It's almost like being somebody slamming on the brakes on the car. Completely different. It's given rise, the capabilities have given rise to a completely different tech stack. But I sit here thinking to myself now, law firms now are beginning that journey much more quicker about moving to 365. Are we going to see that? Or is it going to be the similar sort of tech infrastructure to what we've seen for the last few years? I don't know. But Stacey, Adrian, anything to comment on?
I can certainly comment on that. I mean, we're looking at, we have E3 at the moment, and E5 is the next level up. So we're looking at E5 potentially. We're looking at the security stack because we have a whole bunch of stuff protecting our security. And no single pane of glass. Whereas if we went with the Microsoft stack, we'd have that kind of single pane of glass, and potentially would be cheaper to do that than have the myriad of other security products that we have. If you look at the price, we're also looking at E5 for voice as well. And I think it's great. And I absolutely love Office 365. In my previous role, I rolled it out to several small companies, and to be able to have Exchange Online, with all the calendar and all that kind of stuff for a very minimal cost, as opposed to having to have a full Exchange server and all the rest of it before, it's made a huge difference for smaller companies. But I do have some issues with Microsoft in their way in which they're kind of very restrictive in what you can and can't do with Teams, and particularly around Microsoft Teams rooms, and they're very restrictive on the hardware. And because of that, I can't get a piece of hardware that does both Zoom and Teams, which is frustrating as hell, because I should be able to switch between the two. I should be able to get a piece of hardware that does anything. And that's really a problem when you're kind of working in a mixed room, in mixed environment. You need to be able to support what the client wants. Sometimes the client wants Zoom, sometimes the client wants Teams. So, and also the limitations around voice, the changes, the way in which I want to do a Teams-based contact center for my service desk team, and it's difficult to do. And now there's an additional license that you have to pay because they have to have a special voice license to do. So that side of it I find frustrating, and that side of it can then become expensive, and because you're locked in with the infrastructure, you're kind of screwed, really. You have to kind of go with it. So that part of it and the control that Microsoft have on it is a bit of a risk, but I think in balance it's an excellent tool. Some of the process automation with the Power Automate, I think it's going to be great. We're kind of a bit screwed because we've implemented to Teams, but we haven't done Exchange Online. And because we haven't done Exchange Online, we can't do all the nice things that go with all these lovely tools. So Exchange Online is coming soon for us. We can't even do Teams rooms because we don't have Exchange Online. So there are some gotchas there you have to watch out for, and we've probably gone the wrong way. Instead of doing Exchange Online first, we did Teams, but we had to do what we had to do to get communication going. So I love it. I think it's great. I'm a big supporter of it, but there are some gotchas. There are some things that frustrate me about it.
So Stacey, any views on 365 and what that can bring to what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo everything that's been said already. I mean, personally, I absolutely love it. We've had it. Most people didn't even know it. So it's actually just about educating our firm, our lawyers, about what we have, what can be used. And it kind of, for me, it allows us, so that's just, I don't know, some of the sort of more fundamentals or the basics. And it's almost, nothing's easy, but it's easier to stomach that, it's not that it's already set up. There's a lot to go into it, and there's a lot to consider and work through. But actually, without having a lot of resources and having a lot of teams to develop X, Y, and Z, it's actually something we can just go with. And now we can. That's there. Now let's just focus on our expertise. We do construction and engineering. Now we can focus on those products that actually are around what we do as experts. And so it allows us to focus on that end of it when that's sort of not taken care of for us, but on the whole, it does what we need it to do without having too much resource to sort of, obviously there is customization and development and so on, but it's there.
What on looking at digital transformation, how big, let's just talk about clients for a moment. How is client demand changing, and how much are they driving this within the firms? I mean, if there any takers for that one?
Yeah, I'd happily jump in on that one. We work, example, we work for a lot of insurance firms, and they are very specific about our security requirements. We used to get a few audits every now and then, and now they're coming thick and fast. We recently, beginning of last year, we set up a new security team headed up by a chap called Carl Knowles. And his team are now responsible for responding to these requirements. And we had taken security seriously, of course, but with the new threats that are out there, and the new ways of and the new tools that are out there, we've certainly upped our game, and we were. I mean, it's something we should be doing anyway, but we had to do it at an increased rate because of the demands from our clients. And they are not going to put business with us if we don't meet their requirements. We recently rolled out an AI endpoint protection tool, CrowdStrike, which was a big expense to the firm, one that wasn't budgeted. But we made the right arguments, and the firm realized that this was an essential tool to protect our environment. And we are looking at other systems, again, also part of the Office 365 stack, to further improve our security presence. But we've also it's not just about the technology, it's also about our policies and processes as well that we've had to transform as well to meet these needs. So yeah, they've had a big driver for us.
Nigel, Stacey, I mean, to what extent has sort of client demand shifted what you're doing on digital transformation?
I think it's inevitable that clients are under the same challenges that we are as organisations to digitally transform, and they're going through the same approaches, and changes in their practice that they, as Adrian says, there's an expectation that you can meet them halfway with that. And in terms of interactions, they're changing, the way that they do business with us, and digital plays a huge part in that. I don't think for 1 second the human relationship element of being a law firm will ever disappear. It's a hugely intrinsic part of what they do. But clients want to offset things like analytics and reporting. So tell me how my matter is going, and I want to see that digitally, and I want to see that visually represented. I don't want a 50-page Word document. I want a single visualization that I can react to and read quickly, because I'm under pressure to get something done. So you're feeling the extension of their needs. The boundaries between clients and ourselves will start to change somewhat. The security will play a part, but the merging of extensions of our services direct into clients is something that we'll start to see, akin to the open banking revolution that banks went through, where the exchange of information and boundaries just disappears. So there's those kind of things. Adrian's touched on it. More audits. Clients want to make sure that you are, transacting securely. So they'll put those demands upon ourselves, and we're starting to see that also.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Stacey, or should we move on? What do you think?
The only thing I'd say is that I think it's the sort of the client-led demand, as it were. I mean, the number of proposals and bids and submissions that we prepare that are asking, what innovation are you doing, or what solutions do you have that are going to help us, either in terms of minimizing your costs, or you law firm learning from your past experiences to help us in terms of analytics and so on and so forth. And I think that client-led demand, I think, is fantastic, because it's helping drive the digital transformation across the board.
I think there's a big piece on this. So I used to be on the receiving end of these things a lot, and we now work, if you like, on every side of the process. But just standing back and looking at the sort of documents you see and the requirements you're seeing in the market, I think there's several things. I think the bar definitely has got a lot higher. I think people are after much clearer demonstration of what difference you're going to make. as in what will the actual returns be, what will efficiency savings be effectively. I think there's a greater degree of diligence in actually, they might talk to a firm and say a firm will promise the earth, and it's like, right, okay, prove it. Tell us who you've done it with. We want to talk to those clients. And I think also the ability, how can I put it, the scientific nature of the questions and the depth at which they're going to, I think, is increasing. This is the days when somebody in a marketing department could cut and paste an answer and put it in. They have long gone, and I think so. I think that there is a sort of sea change in that area. One thing that I think is law firms have struggled with for years is differentiation. What the why us test, what's special about us. Now, digital transformation presents this opportunity, doesn't it? Now, is that something we are seizing? Is that something that we think that either your firms or any other firms about, so that there's that they're becoming very distinct in terms of their personality and their capabilities, or is it a case, this time-honored expression, law firms are like sheep? We've still got that.
We've invested in a low-code tool to help us develop applications that are based around our clients' needs. And I think that's quite exciting because it's giving the client what they want. It's allowing them to interact with us. More simply, it's allowing us to provide financial information to them in a straightforward and easy format. We see Power BI as a tool that will help with that. My vision, to a certain extent, is using inviting clients into a team, into a channel within a team, and in that channel they can exchange documents with us. We can publish Power BI reports of their financial status, the status of the matter. It's sort of getting us closer to our clients and using that innovative tech to make it seamless for them.
So you think there's a genuine opportunity there to differentiate?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Any views on that? Do we think that's happening within the industry?
I do, to a degree. Yeah, and it depends on how hard you're being driven by that, because that's very much a client driving a majority of that question to be differentiate between your peer groups. I think there are many ways you can differentiate, but if we're focusing on the technology, one of the areas that I think is worthy of exploring is to borrow something from other industries around client experience or user experience and customer journeys, and actually engaging with the client to set a joint exploration around what are the customer journeys that are going to work for you going forward, and having them engaging in that conversation and design that using methods and approaches before you get into any kind of, we're going to do this because this will differentiate us. I think it's part of building the relationship with a client and engaging in a CX journey that defines how your approach in conjunction with your client is going to be different in what you deliver as a product or a service or an interaction or a piece of data. And I think there's an area that's untapped there for law companies that is worthy of exploration and getting some expertise in that space.
I agree with you, Nigel. I think we need to have a point where when we go to engage with a client for the first time, we actually take our head of development with us to sit down with them and say, this is what we've done, this is what we can do for you. What would you like? And engaging and having a member of the tech team there right at that point, as I said, at that top level, engaging with the firm and explaining what we can provide to them. I think it is better because it's someone that knows and understands the system, and maybe the partner that on the panel or whatever maybe doesn't understand that, but to have someone there explaining what the capabilities of the law firm are from a technology perspective, I think it is a huge bonus. So we've only really just started to do that, and again, the first project we're using this low code for our aerospace clients. So we hope to be able to do more of that, and I think that will set us apart a little bit from other firms, perhaps.
I think one bit, everybody on this call will know, Legal Technology Insider, and they published that great top 200 list where they summarize all the systems. And you look at it, and I mean, should we be pleased there's a sort of commonality of systems on there and thinking, well, that's good, everyone's choosing the best systems, or should we be quite depressed about that? You know, I mean, again, Nigel, I don't know if you've got any insights from other industries that you've been in, but you know, if you look at banks, have they got all the same products, or is there much greater diversity of product in there?
They've got similar product families. So, you know, delivering mobile banking is delivering mobile banking. But how it's done, you know, if you go and look at Lloyd's or Barclays or Santander, it's very different in what the experience you get. So some of the underlying technologies are the same, but where they augment it is they do product development or integration development that makes it different. Yeah, I mean, this is a debate that would take me far longer than the 9 minutes that we've got to talk about legal tech and fintech and any other prefix tech you get, because, you know, if you look at banking, they got severely burnt by the whole fintech experience where they created silos of product families and that all kind of create the same capability, and it was very difficult to know, you know, why do I pick X over Y? And they got very tired of that and took a different approach. And to some extent, you know, when I first kind of looked into the legal market, there are monopoly stacks of products that, you know, everybody has to have. And it's like, well, that's great, but how does that make you different from anyone else? You know, so, you know, we all need a PMS system, but what is it? We can apply the same logic that's been applied to us. So how is that PMS system going to differentiate me as a business versus yours if we're choosing the product? So I think this is one that will be set to run and will shape, hopefully, the vendors, if there are any listening on this call, to think a little bit different about how am I going to set myself apart in what is going to be a tech revolution and get me to the front of the queue, and why am I going to be selective? And I think that the vendors need to think about that as well.
Any views on this, Stacey?
I was just going to add that I think you know, a couple of years ago, you know, people would, I heard, well, everybody else has this, that, or the other. Why don't we have it? And we don't do that. So it's not even something we do. So we've been, you have this like sense that, well, everybody else is doing it, so surely we must have to go and get it. But actually, we don't. And there's some of them are very expensive and just not necessary. And I think it's just looking at what do you do best, what are your use cases, and solve those ones. And the ones, you know, the ones that most assist with that are, you know, for smaller, medium firms out there that are listening, I'd start there. Yeah.
It's an interesting question, actually, that you've just raised, Nigel. I mean, what do we need in this age of digital transformation? What more do we need to see from our suppliers? So I'll give you one example. I find it quite incredible that when you look at the market like sort of case management or something like that you literally are buying a toolkit. You almost can't buy something that's pre-developed or with a process. Now, in fairness, some businesses like Fliplet are developing sort of what almost prefabricated modules. But and actually, in fairness to the AI providers, some of the AI providers now have trained, so rather than buy a bag of bits, you're actually getting something that you stand a chance of mobilizing quite quickly. But that's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And again, one of the observations I think is that there's been a degree of an egotistical view. You know, how dare you go for something else? This is the best product in there, and I think that goes down to perhaps the way that the interactions in the past with law companies and professional service companies is the tech vendors have known who to single out and who are the decision makers and who are the investment holders, and go and make that persuasive movement. What we're seeing, I think Stacey's mentioned it and Adrian has, is there's a trust now in the technology organizations to be the person involved in that decision making and push back and say, hang on a minute, you know, that product isn't fit for purpose. It's a toolkit. We've got to do all this exceptional other activities to get it to even be marketable. Or, you know, you're selling a product that really has had no challenge in the past, and you're just selling a product because, you have the sheep mentality. So I think there's a lot of nervousness within the vendors, and they're starting to take notice that they've got to do more. They've got to be better at what they're doing. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing for all of us.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'm mindful we're coming to our last 4 minutes. There's one question I just want to end on, and if you can all sort of give a couple of lines on this before we bring things to a close. But you've all done great things in this industry, and most of you have worked in different industries. If you could change one thing to sort of help enable and accelerate digital transformation within the legal industry, what would it be? If that magic wand, what would you change? Any takers to answer that first?
I would get a different career. That's what I would change. I'll go off and do something different. I'll stop being facetious. What would I change differently? I would have changed the timeline on this to do it earlier, to get professional services businesses to gaze out beyond just professional services, to look at what other industries are doing and create co-collaborations across verticals so that they collectively can drive technology vendors and providers and product development in a way much more collaborative that helps seed the advantages of that far earlier than perhaps the law companies have done it today. I think they were quite late to the party, and I think if we could have changed that dynamic, there would have been, because they're smaller in size than a lot of the big companies, and to Stacey's point, the agile element of that and the nimble element of that could have meant they could have led the tech revolution rather than being on the tailcoat of it.
Yeah. Brilliant.
I think for me also, unless it said legal in front of it, law firms almost weren't interested in these kind of applications. You need to look at what tech best supports your business, what your business requirements are, and go with the tech that supports that, not just something that says legal in front of it. And be open to more innovative solutions.
Interesting. Stacey, magic wand, what would you say?
I just want to respond to Nigel, and just to say that I've tried other careers and the grass is always greener. So I'm not sure you're going to find it. I've loved each one of them. Don't get me wrong. I've loved each one of them. But however, I think that, I admire what the others have said, but that this past year has really made, it's put a catalyst for change in people. And I think if we can find another, perhaps not such a destructive mankind pandemic, if we can find another catalyst for change that puts people in that situation where they realize that, one, they can do it, they've got the creativity and the skills and the motivation to do so. I think if we can find that, I don't know what it is, but I do know that if you've got a law firm that leads from the top in that fashion, you can find it and you'll get there.
It is sort of interesting looking at it, and just go back to a point at the beginning that, most tech in law firms, you've got your PMS, document and email management, CRM, if you're lucky, a bit of case or matter as your foundational. It shouldn't almost be called the legal tech because there's very little legal in it. It's still delivered by humans, but the opportunity is we're an $800 billion plus undigitized market. So as technologists, what's there not to like about that? This is, we've got the COVID acceleration factor. We've got some sort of great products, some great developments by Microsoft. This could be the most phenomenal 5-10 years of legal tech that we've ever seen for this industry. So, I guess we should all feel massively privileged to be part of this industry at what will probably be sort of defining time, really. Yeah. So, before Francis tells me off, I better bring this to a close, but just a massive thank you for everyone for joining this session. Thank you particularly to the panelists, to Nige, to Stacey, to Adrian. That's been absolutely brilliant. And again, some real insights that have come out of this. Huge thank you for joining us. And again, just a reminder, these run really regularly. Please do subscribe for future sessions. And we very much look forward to you joining us again. Thank you.